Good day everyone. In this video we'll be breaking down every civilization in Civ 7's modern age and ranking them based on their power level. I'm going to rip through these pretty quickly, as I would say on the whole, despite modern being the age where you literally win the game, your choice of civ in this final third of your campaign in many ways doesn't matter quite as much as previous ages in my opinion, because by this point you'll have done a lot of the legwork to get your civ to where it is, and modern is just that final push. Barring a few exceptions, which we'll talk about when we get to some of the S-tier civs, I'll put the assumptions up on screen here, but let's get straight into it with our first civ, none other than the United States of America. So America on the whole is all about making gold. They gain 100 gold every time you improve a resource, and this is going to be a common theme throughout all of the civ really. They're all about improving resources, they're all about trading. As I said, they're all about making money. 30% reduction towards the Statue of Liberty is a terrible bonus. This is one of the worst ones in the game. I appreciate the flavor of getting a ton of migrants when you create the Statue of Liberty, but it is really, really terrible. The Marine is an okay sort of unit, but America is not actually that great at fighting. They have a few bonuses towards their war support and war production, that sort of thing, but this unit's fine. It's amphibious, so it can attack from water, but nothing too crazy. The Prospector is the unique unit. This can grab resources from 5 tiles away from a city rather than 3. So the capital here, Chris J, for example, could grab this fish, which is 4 tiles away. In fact, it could reach all the way out to this deep ocean tile here. So the Prospector is actually quite good. It's expensive, and you only get to use it once, so once per resource. So in many ways, you know, you could settle a city, but this helps for just those sort of real edge cases where a resource is just out of your range. It's probably a factory resource. America's very much geared towards an economic victory, and you can just build a prospector instead of getting a whole settlement going. It's a convenience unit, I would say. Settlement cap shouldn't really be too much of an issue by the time you get to the modern age, I would say. But overall, not a terrible unit. The industrial park is comprised of 2 production buildings. So double production buildings, one of which also has a production adjacency, gives America a huge amount of production in the modern age, as well as increased resources. So increase the amount of resources you can assign to the settlement by 2 everywhere you build the industrial park, which is really good. If we head over to their civic tree, I'm just going to touch on a few of the good policy cards here. So Gold Rush is not bad. 5 gold for every resource assigned to them. That's a pretty solid buff. By this point in the game, now keep in mind this doesn't include things like empire resources or factory resources until you can actually assign them. It's only resources that you can assign to settlements, so keep that in mind. But 5 gold is quite substantial. Even by this stage in the game, that's not bad for a civic. And you also get here plus 25% gold towards purchasing prospectors. Again, not bad, just helps them be a little cheaper. I enjoy prospectors. I think they're not a terrible unit overall, as I said, so not a terrible one, but it is 2,000 culture for a pretty minor effect, so only probably go for this if you have nothing else that you should really be going for at the time, which is unlikely. Captains of Industry, you get +2 influence for every resource assigned to settlements. Influence, is starting to become less of a good yield by this point in the modern age, as you're all rushing to victory. Typically, I account for sort of the 30 to 50 turn range when it comes to the game ending. That's, I think, aim for turn 50 if you're just starting out in Civ 7. That's maybe a bit ambitious, but turn 40 or so is about when you should be ending the game, in my opinion, depending on your Civ. But yeah, influence is a very strong yield, so keep that in mind. +2 production of resources is very strong. Again, with the Prospector, this is where some of its benefit comes in, is that you can stack more resources in a single city, because if you just settled a new settlement, then this random town would get this production, whereas this you can have a ton of resources in one city, and they'll all be getting this production to that one city, so it's quite good. Wartime manufacturing, so this is where it starts to get into sort of the more military focus. Units receive +3 combat strength. Having more than one adjacent enemy unit is fine, nothing really to write home about. Statue of Liberty is awful, as we said before. Don't build it. And some more bonuses here. One for war, and +25 gold and 5 influence for every trade route is not bad, but it almost kind of pales in comparison to some of these. Granted, if you have a ton of trade routes going, this is fine. But by this point in the game, you should probably have better civics to be plugging in than this. Again, you have to go through 4 civics to get here. It's, tens of thousands of culture, or at least almost just over 10,000. Exactly 10,000, actually. So yeah, that's America. They are a pretty solid civil round. As I said, they really are geared towards an economic victory, which, in my opinion, is probably the hardest victory condition. In fact, I would say definitely the hardest victory condition to meet. For some reason, I see a lot of people saying that they managed to get an economic victory well before they get a science victory, which is mind-blowing to me. Definitely not my experience. So yeah, America overall a really good civ, all about making money, but they really only have that one victory condition available to them, in my opinion. Culture they can do as well, because culture is all about making money, so that is also an option. But yeah, thematically they're economic, and they can go into the B tier. Next up we have Buganda, and they are all about pillaging. So this is the natural progression if you played Bulgaria, B for Bulgaria and B for Buganda in the exploration age. They're all about pillaging. So they gain culture when they pillage buildings or improvements equal to the yield or healing gained. So this works on both urban and rural districts. Land and military units gain the amphibious ability. So take that, America. The Marines ability, they just get it for free on all of their units for the whole age. And 30% production towards this wonder, which we'll talk about a bit later. Look, this doesn't sound like much, but there are a lot of stacking bonuses you can get from this pillaging effect. So we're talking Mausoleum of Theodoric. If you can manage to get that in the Antiquity Age, you absolutely should, if it's your game plan to go into this in the late game. Granted, that is a very hard wonder to get, so you might have to conquer it. You should be taking the promotion on your commander that gives you 50% more yields. They have a unique commander here that gives another 50%. It just keeps stacking. There's also a card we'll talk about later, a civic rather. So add all these up and you will be getting hundreds of culture for free whenever you pillage every turn. And it's really fantastic. Buganda is actually very fun, a very unique playstyle. We really are just kind of missing an Antiquity Age pillage civ, and then the whole three ages would be complete. Either way, so their unit here plays into this quite well, really well. Unique infantry unit, and it heals 10 health every time you pillage a tile. Really fantastic stuff. It's a shame that they don't have any bonuses, I believe, to not using up your entire movement when you pillage, so you still are a little bit immobile when you're doing this. Keep that in mind. As I said, they have a unique commander, which is really fantastic. Just plays into what they want to be doing. Really great. Hopefully by this point in the game you already have maybe 3 or 4 commanders, so they'll all become these more armies, and they are fantastic. They have the Kabaka's Lake, and I want to talk about this. This is such an awesome improvement, and to be honest, Civ 7 needs more of this. It's one of the most unique improvements they've ever made. And it's essentially a reverse polder. If you didn't know, the polder's, a Dutch improvement from previous games that essentially turns water tiles into land. This turns land tiles into lakes. And they have a whole sort of playstyle around lakes that I find really, really compelling. And I wish they'd play into this more. And I wish more civs had things like this. There's a bit of a, we'll get into the civics, but there's a bit of a lake economy you can get going, which is really quite interesting. You can buff them up massively, these tiles. So keep this in mind. When we're looking at all these lake bonuses, it's not just natural lakes like you see here that we spawned on, these ones here. You can turn quite a bit of your land into lakes, and they inherit all the bonuses. The requirement here is that it must be placed on an existing improvement on flat terrain, and you only get 1 per settlement, which I think should absolutely be changed. I honestly believe you should be able to make as many of these as you wish. I think that would be so much fun if you could turn your entire empire into lakes. Maybe a bit broken, but we need more stuff like that. So anyway, moving over to their civics, they have a quite a straightforward tree, and no settlement limit increases, which is quite curious. First civic, you unlock the lake, and +2 culture and food on lakes and navigable rivers. So again, this applies to your artificial and your natural lakes. Not a bad effect. +1 movement for embarked units is good if you're, going through lakes, for example. +3 happiness in settlements for each other friendly settlement within 6 tiles is pretty terrible. I wouldn't worry about this too much, but it does help a little bit with happiness when you're conquering other people's civs. And you also get their wonder here, which gives +4 culture and food on improvements and districts on lake tiles. It must be placed adjacent to a lake, which will be no issue for you. This wonder recently got changed, and it's not bad now, considering how many lakes you can get in your empire. And you probably have quite an expensive empire by this point. It's not bad, actually. I don't mind this wonder too much. And again, it plays into the flavor of the civ, which I love. Over to the next one, we have an awesome civic here. You should probably be rushing this if you're playing Buganda. You should probably be declaring war on like turn 1 or 2 if you're playing Buganda, by the way, and go for this civic immediately, and you'll get there quite quickly because of all your pillaging. But this is going to turbocharge your pillaging even further, another 50% here. Really good stuff. Pillaging grants experience to friendly commanders when within their command radius is fantastic. I almost wish Bulgaria had something like this as well, but yeah, just helps your commanders level up super quick. In this late age, and commander promotions are just as good on turn 1 as they are, in antiquity compared to the modern age. Commander promotions you always want at every stage of the game if you're doing combat, so this is really great. And a whopping +6 combat strength if you're fighting adjacent to a coastal lake. Now granted, that is a coastal lake, which I believe would only be... I can't even see one here. So like here, I think this would be considered coastal lake. Now, granted, it's been a long time since I've played Buganda, but I think this is quite a specific bonus, but +6 is a lot of combat strength. So if someone could correct me in the comments, if this applies to all lakes, or like why do they specify coastal lake? I'd be keen to know. And the last civics here, we have +1 culture and happiness on quarters adjacent to lakes and navigable rivers. I kind of wish this was buildings rather than quarters. This isn't very substantial at all. 4,000 culture to unlock, and it only gives 1 culture and happiness back. It's never going to pay itself off. So this needs a bit of a buff in my opinion. And settlements adjacent to lakes gain 1 population, and all buildings gain adjacency from coastal lakes. Again, coastal lakes, I think those might be, on second thought, those might be natural lakes only, not your built ones. Again, could be wrong, but these two civics at the end here aren't fantastic. Getting 1 population or settlements by this point isn't probably going to make or break the game. But yeah, that's Buganda. Overall, I really like the design of the civ. I think they're one of the more unique ones, although probably, I imagine, quite underplayed. They don't sound very good when you look at them. And to be fair, they aren't amazing. So their obvious sort of points they can go for are cultural and military. So they are very good at military dominations, and there used to be some incredible posts where people were winning the game on turn 3 of the modern age, 3 turns to finish the entire ideology legacy path and build the wonder. That was with the old Bulgaria tradition, so unfortunately it's not really possible anymore. But yeah, they are very good at getting to their ideology super quickly, which means you get double the ideology points for the military victory. Culturally, they just get a lot of culture, so they can get through the regular civic tree quite quickly, get their explorers there quicker, get to hegemony faster, all that good stuff, and then can even get some relics from the future civic if they really want to. So overall, they are really good at the 2 victory paths that are the far and away easiest to fulfill, which is cultural and domination. But they do require quite a bit of prep work, and I think if you didn't play Bulgaria in the previous age and you don't have that food card in, they're a little bit weaker as well. If you didn't get the Mausoleum of Theodoric, they're a bit weaker there as well. So they really require you to play around the theory that you're going to play Buganda in the modern age from the start of antiquity. So for that, I think a lot kind of has to go right for them to work. I would put them in B tier as well. Next up, we have France, and this is where we start to get into some really unfocused civs, and the last thing you want to be in the modern age is unfocused. And so a lot of people talk about France as being very flexible, and that's, a strength is being flexible. I would disagree. I mean, flexibility isn't in and of itself a weakness, but you really want to be laser focused on a victory condition to be good in the modern age, because the age is just so short that you can't afford to be, doing a little bit of everything. They really need to be working towards one particular path. So their ability lets them select the celebration effects of any government in the modern age. This is fine, but, if France was, say, a science civ, you would just always pick the science one, and you're always going to pick the culture one if you're going cultural victory. So this is not very strong, in my opinion. Just kind of a whatever effect, I would say. 30% production towards the Eiffel Tower, we'll get to later. The thing about France is that they're actually quite military focused, so keep that in mind. They have a lot of cultural effects which help them, get to that ideology point, but really they're very military focused. So they have the Garde Imperiale, unique infantry unit that can make a ranged attack, and they get 2 combat strength when adjacent to a friendly army commander. more expensive to train. Not a bad unit. Having a ranged attack is always really strong for a melee unit. Infantry units are quite weak in this game in general because they're not as tanky as in previous entries, really, compared to cavalry, which are almost always just better. So giving them a ranged attack and making them a bit of a hybrid between melee and ranged is good and makes them better. So not bad, but they are expensive to train. We have the Jacobin, which I'm sure I'm pronouncing correctly. This is their great person, so you have to create their avenue to create this first, which is their unique quarter. These are really all over the shop. A lot of these are quite good for their combat bonuses, so there are quite a few of these that do give combat strength buffs to all your units, which are really good on the whole, I would say, for what France is trying to do. There are some that give, science, culture, that sort of thing, happiness, and there's also one here, Paul Barras, that is probably the worst great person in the game. Paul Barras gives you plus 10% effects from supporting endeavors, which is just one of the most atrocious effects you could ever give. In the modern age, you're definitely not going to be supporting endeavors, I would say, as a general rule. Bad example here, but if I was Confucius and Confucius offered me a science, research pact, whatever it's called, and it would be for 18 science, Paul Barras would buff that to 19.8 science instead of 18. So a whopping 1.8 science extra from that 60 influence spent, I think it is, from that endeavor. Really terrible. So unfortunately, if you roll Paul Barras, you just got swindled out of getting a decent grade person. I would say these are unfortunate because they're just so inconsistent in what you could get when some of them are so good. So keep that in mind. You're going to have to make quite a few of these to get the ones you want. The unique quarter is the Avenue, which gives plus 2 happiness on quarters in the city. Again, not a great effect. Plus 2 happiness is pretty minor by this point. And both their buildings here are cultural and happiness. They swap the yields here. Not bad. Again, culture is really good for domination victories because you want to get to that ideology as quick as you can to get more legacy points from your capturing settlements. But yeah, a happiness building in the modern age is really not ideal. So there you go. Moving over to their civic tree, and there's not much good in here, unfortunately. So this is where you get your buildings here, the first two, and constructing a building grants culture equal to 25% of its production cost. This is actually not bad for one of these, 25% of its cost type cards. So modern age buildings tend to be pretty expensive. If we look at the first tier here, the city park is 500 production, 550 on the military academy, 1200 on the port, 550 for a schoolhouse. So overall, if you plug this card in, let's say for that first tier of buildings, you're going to be getting about 125 culture every time any of your cities finishes a building, which I think is actually not bad. 125 culture isn't like outstanding, but it does sort of scale as the game goes on because your buildings will get more expensive. So I actually don't mind this one. For only 2,000 culture, this will pay itself back very quick and will continue to pay dividends as the age goes on, so it's not bad. The mastery here is plus 2 culture on happiness buildings and wonders, which is terrible. Do not take this ever. It will never pay itself off at 2,000 culture. Down here, we have when you defeat an enemy unit, gain culture equal to 20% of its combat strength. This is horrendous. Do not take this. Units have maybe, I don't know, it's about 80 or so combat strength. Kind of hard to see. 50. So 50 combat strength, that's, 12 and a half culture every time you defeat another infantry unit. Terrible. Absolutely horrendous. Do not plug this in. It's really awful. Plus 2 happiness on military buildings and wonders and an extra settlement limit down here. The settlement limit's good, but the happiness is pretty pointless, so wouldn't worry too much about that. Grand Army gives your commanders a promotion, and new commanders start with an extra promotion as well. So combine this with the military attribute tree. It means you can get all your commanders freshly trained, start off with 2 promotions, which is pretty good. You're going to get this just because you're progressing down the tree anyway, and you're going to be using your commanders a lot. As I said in the previous one, commander promotions are fantastic at every stage of the game if you're doing warfare, so yeah, a really solid civic. And the mastery, plus 2 combat strength for each adjacent friendly military unit. Now this is really strong. This is not if you have a military unit nearby, you get plus 2. It's for every adjacent military unit. So keep in mind that in Civ 7 we play with hexagons, the bestagons, and so that means you can have a unit surrounded by 6 units, 6 friendly units, Considering you can also do ranged attacks on your unique unit here as well, this means that you can have like, you know, a block of 7 units here, and they're all going to be getting, you know, +6 from each other, but the middle guy here is going to be getting +12, which is pretty insane. So in terms of combat effects, it's actually a very, very strong ability here, probably the best in their whole tree, realistically. The tradition here is that the infantry units gain the Swift ability, which lets them ignore zone of control, which is not bad. It's not a bad effect, really. Infantry units are quite limited in where they can go, but it's usually by terrain, not so much by zone of control. Considering they can only move 2 tiles anyway, at least by default, you know, ignoring zone of control isn't fantastic for infantry, really, so keep that in mind. It's probably doing less than you think. And the last civic here, 2 culture for every social policy slot into the government, is one of the worst civics in the game. This is absolutely horrendous. If we go look at our government here, you start with 3 social policies, and maybe, let's say you average 4 celebrations before the modern age ends. So being generous, that's, you know, 5 to 6, let's say 6 social policies you can have, you know, on average throughout the age. That's 12 culture. It costs 4,000 culture to unlock for a maximum payoff of, you know, 14 culture per turn. Absolutely horrendous. The Eiffel Tower is unlocked here as well, but I wouldn't bother getting that either, to be honest. So yeah, you can probably skip this final civ. If you really want the Eiffel Tower, just go ahead and get it in the regular tree. Although it's actually in the tech tree, keep that in mind. But yeah, that is France. They, you know, as I said, you really shouldn't be thinking that they're a versatile civ that you could do any victory condition with. They're not. They are a domination civ, I would say. Throw a little bit of culture in there as well, but that's just for the ideology, not so much for the actual culture victory itself, which really is more about gold at this stage in the game. So yeah, France, because of this mastery here, I think the 2 combat strength for each adjacent unit makes them really quite strong compared to a lot of other civs in the age. So when it comes to military domination, again, it's probably the most busted victory condition in the game. Right up there with culture victory, I'd say. So because of that, they're really good at a victory that is easy to get. France can go into A tier. Hate to say it. Next up we have the British, and now we're getting into this is a good civ right here. So with their ability, plus 25% gold towards purchasing buildings, and 25% production towards constructing buildings. These are just really good effects. This is kind of like a better copy of gold you get for free, the resource that is. And 25% production towards constructing buildings from turn 1 is really fantastic. So just free stats here, it's really great. 50% more to convert towns into cities is negligible by this point. You're going to have all the cities you want. They'll be quite built up, so they'll be heavily discounted already because of their population and existing buildings. So still not going to cost much gold at all, to be honest. Or you've carried over the economic legacy age from the exploration age, and all your cities remain cities. So this is really, don't worry too much about this at all. It's barely a downside. The Battersea Power Station is the Venetian Arsenal equivalent in Civ 7, where you get 2 units every time you build 1 naval unit. So it's not bad, but Britain's not really geared towards much of a domination playstyle, but they can do it. And to that end, they do have this, the Revenge. Unique heavy naval unit. It essentially gives them the bombard effect for free, which is such a strong ability. Such a strong ability. If you don't know how this works, it kind of ignores combat strength, this effect. So if you bombard with this naval unit, say an exposed army commander, and they take 100 damage, you one-shot it. All of the, let's say, tanks around that army commander, even though they have much, much higher combat strength, will take, in this case, 25 damage each. So it completely just like ignores all combat strength effects. It deals the flat amount of damage no matter what, depending on what you hit. It's insane. So this is a really good effect, really strong effect. Yeah, it's just not really what Britain's all about by this stage. So what they are about is stuff like the Antiquarian, Unique Explorer, which is what you use to collect artifacts, and plus 20 culture for every tile from your capital when you use Excavate Artifact. This is going to give you like a pretty decent amount of culture. It's actually not too bad, really. Again, culture isn't actually that important for a cultural victory. It is, but it's not as important as you think. Not compared to gold, I would say. Gold and having a lot of settlements all over the globe, or in this case, all over the map. Yeah, the Antiquarian is a very good unit and a very solid improvement on the default Explorer. We have the Financial Center, and this gives you +2 gold and science for every connected settlement, which would be really fantastic if connections worked. Right now, Civ 7's pretty buggy when it comes to these. I've not been able to figure it out. I follow all the tutorials. I've read, the rules. I've read the Civipedia to the best of my ability, despite that thing being pretty rubbish. So yeah, this would be so strong if it worked all the time, but it's really inconsistent in how much gold and science it's going to give you. But a super strong effect, and when connections get sort of fixed or made to be a lot more understandable, this will become an insanely good quarter. It's already not bad. The buildings here both give gold and production, which are really good. So yeah, really good for this age. Really good buildings. Moving over to their civics. You have Pax Britannica, and right off the bat they hit you with an incredible effect here. 3 production to settlements for every factory resource assigned to them. So even regardless of what victory condition you're going, you're going to want to be assigning factories are just really strong in general, I would say. Even if it's, if you want more culture, more science, more production towards buildings and wonders, factory resources give you all of that. And you can get a ton of factory resources into a single city, so this is going to be giving you a lot of production if you've got, plenty of trade routes going, that sort of thing. It's a really strong effect. I rate this quite highly. Down to the masteries where you get your second building in the Battersea Power Station. Nothing too exciting down there. This civic here, cities with a great work and a resource, get 4 culture and 4 science. That's pretty minor. Nothing really to write home about here. I wouldn't worry about this card too much. I would probably not even plug it in, to be honest, ever, I would say. But the effect here, the other one, is 1 movement to civilians, which is really good because that affects your explorers. Interestingly, it doesn't actually affect your merchants, because in the modern age, your merchants instantly teleport to where you send them and start the trade route straight away. So this just affects your settlers and your explorers, as far as I know. I don't believe scouts are considered a civilian unit. I'm pretty sure they're military. Chartered companies. This is where you get the East India Company, and this civic is insane. This is going to be giving you thousands of gold easily as soon as you plug this in. You're going to want to have, a lot of towns. You are naturally going to have a lot of towns strewn throughout the world. 3 gold on every building, and assuming you should have built, where you can, every single ageless buildings, every warehouse building in your towns. That's, 5 or 6, 7-ish buildings in your towns. So, over 20 gold per town. It's a lot. It's a lot. And if you have urban centers as well on top of that, it's just going to be giving even more. This thing generates so much gold, it's crazy. So, true to life, I guess, the East India Company, ignore the war crimes. They made a lot of money. So this definitely plays into that. And +1 resource capacity and settlements with a port. This sort of thing just helps you get more factory resources in, more resource settlement cap, resource capacity rather, which is going to help with this production card here, which is good. Down the bottom here, at the end of the turn, if you have positive or 0 gold per turn, units receive +3 combat strength. So a very roundabout way of saying your units get 3 combat strength if you have not negative gold, which is okay. No Eternal Allies gives 10% food and gold in towns, but -5% gold in the capital for every alliance. What an incredible card. Combined with the East India Company up here, this is a further 10% gold to all your towns. Really incredible stuff. Don't worry too much about the alliance thing. I mean, if you've gone and, a diplomatic alliance build up until this point, this is going to sting a little bit. But 5% less gold in the capital is really not that much compared to the effect you get. And you also get a settlement limit here as well. So, Great Britain, I think they're really quite good. They make a lot of money between these 2 cards, and a lot of production here as well from this one. You do get this quite early, and you're not going to have factory resources by the time you unlock this, but I would say rush towards these 2 end civics here. They're really fantastic towards a culture victory, and that's really what Great Britain excels at. They are singularly focused on a culture victory. Yes, they can do economic victory as well, but really your factories are just complementing your other, your cultural aspect and your gold, that sort of thing. It's really not what they're best at. So yeah, go for a culture victory as Great Britain. Pump out explorers with all the gold you're making. It's insane. It's really good, and for that reason, I think Britain can go into A tier. They don't quite crack it in S tier, I think. They're really close, but I think they're not broken. They're just so good at what they do. Whereas I would say the two S tier civs we'll talk about a bit later are pretty broken. So Great Britain can stay at the top of A tier. They're just really, really good. Next up, we have Meiji Japan, and we just take a second to appreciate how good this game looks up close. I mean, the architecture is just so fantastic on these buildings. The river running through the city and all the buildings built on the coastline. It's just amazing, isn't it? I mean, how good. Anyway, onto their abilities. They have one very, very straightforward ability, and it's very strong. When you overbuild a building, gain science equal to 50% of the building's production cost. This is going to absolutely turbocharge you through the science tree. It's this ability, reminds me of some sort of restoration, I guess you could say, where you overbuild old buildings and you gain benefits from that. So the Meiji are very good at that sort of thing. And yeah, it's going to give you a ton of science throughout the game. And you're playing for a science victory. That's what Japan's geared towards, obviously. And no other civ can get through the tree quite as fast as they can, in my opinion. All you need to do is get to rocketry, really. There's 3 projects along the way here that require a huge production sink to complete. But yeah, it's all about science. And then it becomes all about production just after that. So just like previous civ games, really, the science victory is very straightforward, very easy to understand. But Japan is just so good at completing it with this ability. Keep in mind, it doesn't sound like too much, maybe, but again, a tier 1 building at the start of modern costs about 500 to 550 productions. So every single time you build a building, you're going to be getting about 100, 125 science. Having that effect go off every few turns in every single city adds up to a lot of science very, very quickly. So they really are fantastic at that. Moving on to their unit, the Mikasa. Yeah, it's got a really interesting effect, although Japan isn't really geared towards military victory, other than the fact that having good science lets you have better units. But the first time this unit is destroyed, it respawns in the closest settlement you own at 50% health, which is a really strong effect. It's like, the Mausoleum gives you your cavalry back. Japan gets their naval units back, or at least this one. So a really strong effect. They have the Zero, which is a unique fighter air unit. Increased range, full combat strength against other fighter air units, and it can intercept enemy air units just like other fighters can. So just a slightly better fighter unit, but air units are so strong in modern, and the AI is really, really bad. So the intercepting other air units isn't that great because the AI doesn't tend to build any air units, in my opinion, but regardless, it's still a strong unit. Even if you don't really get to use its bonuses that often. And lastly, we have the Zaibatsus, their unique quarter. Yeah, this is a really strong effect. So 1 gold and production on buildings in adjacent districts. So if you build the Zaibatsu here, for example, all of these buildings around it are going to be getting +1 gold and production, which is going to be a ton of, at its max, that is 12 gold and 12 production across these buildings here. So a really strong effect, and you get an extra resource slot as well once you finish it. The buildings here give gold and production, and of note here, this production building gets production adjacency from coastal terrain, which is really easy to fulfill. So if you put it here, for example, that is a +11 production building, if I'm not wrong, +10 rather. Really, really strong, although, balance this out with the adjacency to other buildings. So yeah, a really strong set of buildings there and a really strong quarter overall. Moving over to their civics, we have +50% production towards constructing military and production buildings. That includes your unique one, but your military buildings, remember, in Civ 7 are production buildings, essentially. This is just, production towards more production is really great. When you train an aircraft or naval unit, receive science equal to 25% of its production cost. So again, more free science. Well, this one's a lot more minor, but there is an interesting strategy you can sort of do that I'll touch on the next civic. This one here, Supreme War Council. Down here, you unlock your other building, and 50% production towards constructing science buildings. Again, so you just get so much production towards building buildings, and you just want to be overbuilding everywhere as much as you can. and getting those huge science boosts. And this just makes, you're overbuilding buildings with science buildings as well. It just turbocharges everything you want to be doing as Meiji Japan. It is so fantastic. And what else do you want? Science and production. And they have a card here that gives 1 science and production to all your specialists, which is absolutely fantastic. Just such a good card by this point in the game. So we have the Supreme War Council here, and this gives plus 25% production towards training naval and aircraft units. So combined with this civic here, what you can actually do, and it's slightly more efficient than running research initiatives, which, you only want to be doing as Meiji Japan if you don't have anything to overbuild, most likely, although buildings like the Grocer aren't fantastic, really. But instead of running research initiatives, if you plug this card in, then you can just pump out naval units or, air units. So you can essentially convert your production into science slightly more, 25% more efficiently than just doing the research project, and you get a bunch of units with it. Now, granted, those cost gold maintenance, but still, it's 25% more science, a better conversion rate. So an interesting sort of strategy, I guess. And the other civic here is that military buildings receive a production adjacency from coast, which is really, really strong. Again, production is what you want on a science victory. It's going to be, that and science are your biggest 2 gates to get through to win the game. And yeah, a lot of civs can struggle to get through the end of the tech tree, and then, can take in the realm of 10 to 15 turns to finish some of those late game projects. Meiji Japan really smashes through some of that with their insane production. The last civic here gives 3 combat strength units on or adjacent to coast. Again, if you're going for a domination victory, then there you go, a little bit more strength. And 6 combat strength for aircraft attacking an enemy unit engaged by a naval unit. This is a really interesting mechanic that you have to engage a unit and then bring your aircraft in. I really like that, and I wish there was more effects like this. Really, really cool effect. But overall, you can skip this civic entirely if you're not going for a domination victory. You're probably going for science, and this is only military effects here. So between these 3 cards, there are some really good effects. You can even skip this one if you're really desperate, but that military production bonus is quite strong, so keep that in mind, that you do want that. And the training units for science strategy, I do think is slightly more efficient, if my understanding is correct, which I believe it is. So that's Meiji Japan. The science victory is reasonably difficult compared to culture and domination. But with Meiji Japan, I don't think it feels like it. I think they are so good, and you'll see people, granted under some pretty specific conditions, finishing the science victory in, I think I've seen 7 turns, that sort of range. It's insane how quickly you can do it. Granted, a lot of that comes down to the Maya, so, the Maya are still absolutely busted if you pick them in Antiquity. But yeah, Meiji Japan is really strong, the best science civ in Modern by far, and because of that, they can go into S tier. Next up we have Mexico, and when it comes to civs that people call flexible, Mexico is definitely number 1. Again, I use that, slightly disparagingly, being called flexible in Civ 7. But I will say Mexico is a lot better than I expected, and you really do have to play them to understand how they work exactly. But yeah, they're not bad. So they start with a unique government, the Revolucion, and this government can only do 1 celebration effect, 30% culture for 10 turns. You cannot enter any other government type, you're stuck with this one, but we'll get into that a little bit later, exactly how this works. In fact, no, we'll get into it now. So they start off with this one that just gives 30% culture, which already is 50% better, in a way, than your standard sort of government. Typically, these bonuses are 20% culture, so they get 30% right off the bat, which is not bad. But if we go to the civic tree here, once you unlock your first one, these 3 civics here all give you different effects for your government celebrations. So up the top here, 30% science instead. So you don't get these additively, right? So you don't get 30% culture and 30% science. These unlock more choices for you to pick when you celebrate. But these are all better than the standard celebration types. So granted, these 2 I'm not as familiar with. They're a bit more complicated. So this is for military units and this is for diplomatic actions. This one in particular is not very good in my opinion, but the culture and science ones, 30% compared to 20% is a substantial increase. So it's not very hard to get here. So they actually aren't too bad at something like a science victory, but really they're more of a cultural, sort of civ really, because they can get that celebration from turn 1. So You don't ideally want to be going for other victories with them, in my opinion, but they can. And 40% production towards military units is, quite good realistically. So, and you get some other bonuses here we'll get into, but that's how the government works. Quite an interesting sort of idea. One of the more unique civs in that sense. They also get, this is their wonder here, gain 1 artifact, and it has 3 artifact slots, plus 3 happiness on great works. This is really horrendous. Although I will say, actually, in saying that, they did just change it. So yeah, this now gives you 1 artifact straight up. I know I just said it was terrible, but this wonder is actually not bad now. 1 artifact sounds so pitiful, and it is when it comes to yields, but this is 1/15 of your victory condition satisfied when you build this, so you should be building this if you're going for a culture victory, and you should be going for a culture victory. Of course, as I've said a few times in this video, this is by far the most broken victory condition, really, when it comes down to it. So yeah, they've got that going for them. And you unlock that very early on. So they get 30% production towards that. We have the unique infantry unit. Adjacent units heal 10 HP. Does not stack. So this is a really strong effect. Getting extra health back when you heal is really strong. Helps a lot when you're on the offense in particular. Healing in enemy territory becomes a lot easier with these around. But again, not really a military civ. We have the unique great person. And like most great people, these are fine, but just really all over the place. So, there's a few combat strength bonus ones in there. There's, where you get units for free. There's a celebration. There's culture from farms. Summons a free infantry unit on every land district in a town is quite interesting. And then there's one in here that gives a commander 5 levels, which is pretty crazy. But yeah, look, overall, I don't think these are really worth building. I would say ever, if you're going for a culture victory. The chances that you get one of the good ones is too low. Even the culture ones really are quite bad, to be honest. 1 culture to all farms in a settlement is terrible. 10 culture for every promotion a commander has is pretty terrible as well. Like, even if you had a ridiculous commander that was like level 30 or something, this still wouldn't be good in my opinion. So yeah, don't worry about these. They're pretty terrible on the whole. The unique quarter gives 2 culture for every tradition slotted into the government, which again, by this point of the game is pretty bad, but you can build these in, multiple cities, so it's not as bad as you think. It'll help with specialists and that sort of thing, so not too bad overall, and they have 2 culture buildings, so again, quite clear what they're sort of going for. They really are all about culture. Again, so keep in mind, culture is helpful for the military victory as well, but no, that wouldn't be my recommendation. With these 3, there isn't actually much to talk about. So this gives you science. This gives your empire towards science with the celebration and the effect. This gives you towards military domination with the combat strength for land and naval units in friendly territory for every tradition in the government. So this is quite substantial, but it's only on the defense. Keep that in mind. And this is for diplomacy in theory. I don't believe this... diplomatic actions here doesn't include stuff like befriending independence, which would actually be quite strong. That's my understanding, but I could be wrong on that. The culture in towns for every tradition is fine, but nothing outrageous. Overall, I think their civics are okay. The one up here, 2 happiness and settlements for every tradition. Again, happiness is such an easy yield to get, but Mexico does want to be in non-stop celebrations because they're so good, so try to make sure you reach that happiness threshold where you are in a constant celebration. But yeah, look, overall, they do culture, they can do science, and they can do military, but again, they fall into this jack of all trades, master of none, which is just the absolute opposite of what you want to be doing in the Civ 7 modern age. So they're not bad, they're better than I thought. Worth giving a go, they're pretty fun, but yeah, they have to go into B tier. Next up, we have the Mughal Empire. And I'm just going to come out and say it. They are the best civ in modern age, at least most of the time. I think they are absolutely outrageous. What do? 75% to gold, minus 25% to all other yields. So look up the top left here, 75% to this, minus 25% to all this. Which sounds like a huge downside for only getting, more gold, but they really play into this. They really play into this well. They are far and away the best culture civ in the game. Why are they the best culture civ in the game when they get minus 25% culture? Because culture victories are all about gold as a general rule. So yes, buying explorers and digging up artifacts from relic sites is probably a main way, typically, of getting relics. But what the game doesn't tell you is that every time you overbuild a building, I think there's about a 10% chance or so that you get a relic from that for free. What the Mughals can do, apart from, they can buy explorers everywhere, and they're so good at that. They can carpet the map with explorers and snatch up all the relics before anyone else can. They're fantastic at that. And while they're doing that, they can just be buying buildings, like cheap buildings in all of their settlements everywhere, and getting a ton of these relics for free from these events. They are so, so good. Like, gold lets you do everything in the modern age, obviously. The more gold you have, the more of everything you can buy. So, this minus 25% to yields doesn't actually impact them too much. Like, yes, it's a big downside, but because you're going to be getting your buildings up so much faster than everyone else, because you can just buy them instead of having to produce them and wait, you can actually keep your yields pretty competitive with the other players. Moving down to their units here, so they have the Sepoy. It's a unique infantry unit. It can make a bombard ranged attack, which is really good, but I wouldn't ever recommend going to war with them. Although, again, with all their gold, they can just buy unit after unit after unit and just swarm you down. So, again, they're so good at like everything, but really, like, culture's where it's at. But this is a solid unit. A bombard range attack is really good for a unique infantry unit. I have a unique settler, and it gives +1 population on new settlements, which is a pretty minor effect. Keep in mind, because it's a unique unit, it costs a bit more than a regular settler, so you got that to contend with, but +1 population gets your settlements, off the ground a bit faster. But in the modern age, you're not really caring about new settlements at this point, to be honest, so kind of inconsequential. And the unique building is the stepwell. This thing is rubbish. It's, food in the late game is just not that great. +2 food from adjacent farms. Like, this would be a good effect otherwise, but by the time this rolls around in the modern age, it's just not really worth getting all of the time. Has to be placed on flat terrain as well, and it can't be adjacent to another stepwell. So, yeah, just not a great improvement overall. Don't worry too much about that one. And moving over to their civics, this is when things get a little crazy towards the end, particularly. +1 gold on farms is fine. +1 food and gold on farms for each adjacent plantation, and vice versa. This is, again, fine. You get your stepwell here. This is all fine. Nothing really that insane so far. +1 happiness on farms. +2 gold on quarters with walls. That's pretty bad. And the settlement limit here, that's fine. +25% gold towards purchasing infantry units. That's pretty good if you're going, you're buying units. This is fantastic. A big discount. +3 combat strength for all units. Just a flat bonus. That's pretty good. And you get the red fort, which gives 50 health to the tile itself. So it's a district you have to conquer, and all of your city centers across your empire. So generally just makes you tankier across your whole empire, across all your cities. And then we get to Gardens of Paradise. You can purchase wonders with gold, and +25% gold towards purchasing anything, which includes wonders. Wonders are really cheap. For whatever reason, they're only about 2,000 gold typically. 2,000 gold is nothing to the Mughals. You'll be making, I would say 5,000 gold plus, generally, if you've done pretty alright throughout the game. Either way, wonders are so cheap to buy for some reason. They're so great. But what makes this, like, giga broken? The projects that you have, the wonders that you have to make to finish the game, to win a victory, they're wonders. So when you finish the cultural victory path, you get all your 15 artifacts. That same turn, you can buy the World's Fair and instantly win the game. It is completely ridiculous. Now, there aren't many great wonders in the modern age, generally speaking, but the fact that you can buy your victory condition with gold is absolutely, it's just crazy. Now, this is very strong, but I love it. I think they need to keep this in the game in some form. This reminds me of playing like Venice and, winning a diplomatic victory in Civ 5 by just buying the world out. This is such a fun ability, and I really hope they don't remove it just because it's quite poorly tuned at the moment. The Mughals are so fantastic. There's really not much more to say about them. They're so good. Yes, it sounds simple, like all they do is just make a ton of gold, but gold buys, when you have essentially unlimited gold, gold buys everything, including the victory condition. So yeah, pick the Mughals. They are super fun, and win the game very, very quickly. It's really quite easy to get a sub 30 culture victory with these guys. They're just that good. So yeah, Mughals can go right up to the top of S tier. Such a fun civ, and such an insane level of power as well. Next up we have Nepal, who are the newest modern age civ added to Civ 7. And they're all about mountains, so you want to follow these guys on from the Inca and the Exploration Age, ideally. And I would say, borderline, don't pick Nepal if you didn't pick Inca, because Inca lets you work mountain tiles in Exploration, and that gives you a huge head start if you're playing Nepal. But moving on, their ability is that all warehouse buildings apply to mountains, but they cost 1 gold and happiness maintenance. Now, the happiness maintenance is fine, don't worry about that. So this essentially means that your granaries, your saw pits, brickyards, all that stuff applies to mountains, which makes them really, really good tiles. Mountains become very much worth working. The problem is that in the modern age, your specialists by this point are pretty cracked, and so you don't really want to be working, like, even if they are extremely good, food and production tiles by this point. Now granted, the production's a lot better than the food, but I still think they come in a little bit weak by this point, although we do have a very interesting improvement later that does make them a lot better. Okay, they have a unique unit called the Gurkha. Unique infantry unit. It's stronger, faster, and more expensive. Pretty simple, but you absolutely do not want to be going to wars in Nepal. They're all about friendly cooperation, and they've got a few abilities that play into that. So this is more of a token unit, really. It's nice that it's faster, I guess, but yeah, it's a last resort if you're busting out the Gurkhas. The Sherpa is a unique scout. It ignores mountains and rough terrain for sight, and it ignores featureless mountains for movement, and it can go on Mount Everest, which is a nice bit of flavour. This seems pretty useless at first, but this has quite a unique ability related to the Highland Power Station. This is a unique building, +3 production and 3 culture. It's the Nepal's unique improvement, ageless, which, if there was a 4th age, which I hope there isn't, then this would apply. Anyway, must be placed on a featureless mountain tile and is constructed by the Sherpa once you have the Sagamatha Mastery. So yeah, these Sherpas are essentially built just to create these power stations. They can make them once every 5 turns, but we'll get into that in the civic tree. So Sagamatha's right off the bat here, but it's the mastery where you can build them. We'll get to that. Food and science buildings receive an adjacency from mountains. Again, I mean, there's not much to say here. If you have a lot of mountains, this is good. If you don't have a lot of mountains, this is bad, and you probably shouldn't have picked Nepal. The mastery here, so yeah, this is where your Sherpas can build Highland power stations. They can do it every 5 turns, and they can claim mountains that are up to 5 tiles away from the city centre, so very similar to the Prospector, but this claims mountain tiles. So the Highland power station, 3 production and culture is pretty good at making those mountains better. They really do become production powerhouses. So yeah, good for a science victory in that sense, but I don't know, they're just a bit underwhelming, to be honest. I think they need a bit more. The next civic here is that all districts adjacent to mountains receive defensive fortifications. So this is a one-time effect. As soon as you do this, it checks, and then you get them, and that's it. The mastery here, this is pretty bad, I should say, although, defensive, I guess. +3 combat strength for all units adjacent to mountain terrain, doubled if it's in your territory. Again, super defensive stuff. Units complete fortifications in 1 turn if adjacent to a mountain. I won't repeat myself again. So down here is where we get to some of the Jolly Corporation playstyle. So unlocks a unique endeavour here, or action, called Gift Gurkha, which gives one of your Gurkhas to another civilization, and you get +10 relationship with them and 5 culture for the current relationship level, which is a pitiful amount of culture. So yeah, you basically give them a unit in exchange for 10 relationship, which is actually pretty interesting, but not great. Granted, I think the AI just always accepts this, really, so it's a kind of a cool way to build relationship. I like the flavor and I like the gameplay, but it's not great in my opinion. But play super diplomatically if you're going to be doing this. Helping you with that is their Wonder, which gives you 20 relationship with all leaders when you build it. Really good stuff. Again, it plays into what they want to be doing, which is making lots of friends. So good for them. It's a pretty decent wonder to that goal. Plus, their influence on culture buildings is good. That's a lot of influence. And 50% towards initiating endeavors if you have the least amount of settlements in the game. Otherwise, 20%. What a weird civic. So helps you if you're kind of behind in settlements, which is odd. Nepal feels like a civ that belongs in like a two-player multiplayer team kind of thing where you're giving Gurkhas to your allies and that sort of thing to buff them up. Really interesting design, but single player, not ideal. Museums have 2 great work slots. That's whatever. You're not really struggling for great work slots in the modern age, so that's useless. And mountain tiles receive 4 culture in your capital. Otherwise, it's 2 culture in other settlements. So again, makes mountains even better. Nepal is a weird civ. They get a lot of production for their mountains. Their mountains become really good. Lots of culture, especially with the Highland power stations. They have this sort of thing about loving allies and making everyone like them with their relationship bonuses. But they just don't do anything very strong at all, to be honest. I think they need something. They need something better than what they have right now, and I'm not sure what it could be. They could just make mountains even more insane. Maybe give them science or something. I don't know. +1 culture for every warehouse building you have in the settlement to mountains. I'm not too sure. But yeah, unfortunately, as it stands, I'll have to put Nepal into D tier. They just don't do anything very well. Next up, we have Prussia, who, for all intents and purposes, the premier war civ. All their units receive +1 combat strength for every unfriendly or worse civ relationship, which is pretty easy to do realistically. The Civ 7 AI tends to hate you no matter what, just in general, so this isn't bad. But this is an ability that obviously gets a lot better depending on the size of the map you pick. So if you're playing a map with 10 civs, this could be absolutely incredible. If you're playing on a tiny map, which is you and one other person, not so great. So keep that in mind. They really do benefit from larger maps. The unique wonder is the Brandenburg Gate, but we'll move down to the units. There we have the Hussar. It's a unique cavalry unit, so this is in addition to the regular cavalry unit. It gets +1 movement and +1 combat strength for every movement it has remaining, which sounds great, but this unit, what it doesn't mention is that it's actually weaker than a standard cavalry unit. So you can see here the Cuirassier has 55 combat strength, the Hussar only has 50, and it has 4 movement. So at its best, it has 54 combat strength, which is worse than the standard Cuirassier, and more often than not, a lot worse, because you won't always have all your movement. So I'm not sure why the Hussar is this way. Never build this, basically, to be honest. There are some very specific scenarios where you could get additional movement, but for the most part, this unit is just worthless, completely worthless, and worse than the standard cavalry. So look, not a great start for Prussia, but they are quite good, trust me. We have the Stuka, which is the unique ground attack air unit, +3 combat strength against land units, which is really great. Air units are so strong, and this is just a better air unit. And land units are what you're going to be targeting 90% of the time, so that is really good. Moving over to their civic tree, we have Rur. All buildings gain a +1 production adjacency for navigable rivers. This is horrendous. I mean, unless you have a lot of navigable rivers, but you probably won't. Look, if you have a city, like your capital, on a navigable river, this is actually not terrible. But look, not fantastic on the whole. +2 science on resources, and +1 production in cities for every resource assigned to them. These are both pretty good. A decent chunk of science there from the resource buff, and +1 production for every resource assigned to cities is pretty good. Again, production's really good in the modern age. You're in a rush to build everything, so the more production you have, the better. Keep that in mind. Next up, we have this civic here. You may establish and retain trade routes with civilizations that you are at war with. What a strange bonus, and what a fantastic bonus too. This is really strong. Trade routes are really powerful, particularly in the modern age. So if you're wanting to get things like, forget the equivalents, but, iron, horses, that sort of thing, I think it's oil and rubber in the modern age. So resources that buff your unit's combat strength, typically you'd lose all those effects when you go to war with someone. But this, you can actually keep those trade routes going. I have no idea what the historical aspect of this is. I don't know anything about Prussia, to be honest. But this is a super cool effect, and I really love it, and it's actually a lot stronger than you think. Trade routes are so good at keeping your empire humming, so this is really good. And you get a settlement limit here as well, which is really nice. Plus 25% trade yield in cities connected with the Staatseisenbahn. It's basically with your trade network. This is like the railroad replacement. You also get plus 10% culture in cities not founded by you, which is pretty decent for getting that ideology faster. But by the time you're capturing this many cities and this starts to become worthwhile, you're probably, hopefully, pretty close to your ideology anyway, considering you should probably rush this tree first before you go down your Prussian one. Next up, we have EMS Dispatch, if that's how you say that. Plus 10% production in all cities while at war is really great. You're going to be at war the whole game, likely, as Prussia, so there's just a 10% production bonus in all your cities is fantastic. You unlock the Brandenburg Gate, which was recently changed, and I would say is generally a lot better now. It's half of the Gate of All Nations' old effect, but it's now the equivalent of the modern Gate of All Nations. Plus 1 war support on all wars, and that applies retroactively as well. Plus 1 settlement limit, and must be placed adjacent to a district. A really solid wonder. Plus 1 war support on all your wars is a really good effect. Again, the Gate of All Nations used to be plus 2, but if you did get the gate in antiquity, then, you know, combine them, you now have the double gate Exodia, and you've reassembled the best wonder of the game again. So, yeah, really solid. And finally, plus 25% relationship change from diplomatic actions. This just lets you get to that point where people hate you more faster. Keep in mind, this does make them friendlier with you too if you do friendly things, so keep that in mind. Particularly if you are setting up trade routes with them, you probably want to set the trade route up after you declare war, rather than before, so you don't lose, you know, that formal war effect. And lastly, cavalry units gain the skirmish ability, which is 50% combat strength from flanking, which is really strong. Flanking is quite strong in Civ 7. And 3 combat strength for units within the commander radius of a commander with a commendation. And you should definitely have commendations on your commanders by this point in the game if you've been going militarily the whole time. If you haven't, this is going to be a bit of a struggle, but you can probably get that commendation pretty quickly. There's a lot of units flying around in the modern age, so it won't be too hard. Yeah, so overall, Prussia is very much geared towards one thing and one thing only, and that is domination. They are, you know, they get a little bit of culture here and there, a little bit of science to keep their units current. But really, they're all about combat strength, combat effects, and taking over cities. So, yeah, I think they're really good. Again, mainly on the back of the fact that the military path is so easy to complete compared to some of the other victory conditions, except culture. So, because of that reason, I'm going to put Prussia up in A tier. I think they're very comparable to France. If you're in a bigger game, I would lean towards Prussia. Smaller game, smaller map, less players, probably lean towards France. But yeah, Prussia can go into A tier. Next up we have the Qing Empire, Qing China. And this Civ I feel is a little confused because of their ability. And we'll get straight into it. I will say, probably my favorite Civ to play in the modern age. I really love the flavor of them. I love trading. So they get plus 4 gold, 3 culture, and 2 influence from imported resources, but minus 1 science for each one as well. So the reason why I call them confused is that both the Han and the Ming are all about science, generally speaking. And then for whatever reason, Qing China in the modern age gets minus science. So I find that quite odd, considering it's meant to be their natural progression. But regardless, I love this ability. I think it's so fun. And if this was anything other than the modern age, this would be such a busted effect. Even if you halved this, getting influence from imported resources is amazing. Huge amount of culture and a huge amount of gold as well. So much fun. The science isn't really that noticeable either, to be honest, so it's not that bad, but still gonna put you off doing a science victory a little bit there. 30% production towards the Chengde Mountain Resort, which we'll quickly look at here. Plus 5% culture for every other civ with which you have a trade route. It must be placed adjacent to a mountain. This is a really, really good wonder. If you have lots of friends, and you probably will because you'll be trading with everyone, it's just going to be a huge amount of culture. Again, this is another effect that scales off the map size, essentially. So the more players there are in the game, the more alliances you can have, the better your mountain resort is. But yeah, a really fun ability, a really fun effect on both of these parts of the Civ. We have the Gusa. It's their unique infantry unit, and +4 combat strength if it's adjacent to another Gusa. Not much to say about this, just a slightly better infantry unit. Unique merchant. It's a merchant as normal, but it gains 50 gold for every resource acquired when you create a naval trade route. And you're going to be creating mostly naval trade routes, but still a bit of a weird condition. But this is really good. This is going to give you a ton of gold. By this point of the game, your trade routes tend to be pretty chunky. You're probably getting 6 or 7 resources from some really good cities. Gets less as you go down the list. But yeah, not a bad amount of gold, all things considered. Slightly on the low side for modern age, though, I will say. I have a unique quarter, and it gives 25% influence in this settlement when you complete it. It's comprised of a science and a gold building. Again, this would be so fantastic, but by the modern age, influence does start to lose a bit of its luster. It's not really as good as it was in the previous ages, where it's like the best yield in the game, basically. It's just a bit too late by this point. If there is a diplomatic victory one day, a diplomatic victory path, then I think the Qing will become really, really fantastic at that. Up there with Nepal, probably. But yeah, I think right now it's just hard to justify building these buildings. And again, this is a science building here, which just feels a bit off for what they're going for. I think Qing is slightly confused in my mind, and I don't really understand why. We'll move over to their civics. +1 combat strength for all units for every civilization and city set you have a trade route with. This can be a ludicrous amount of combat strength, considering it also counts city-states, which there'll be heaps of probably by this stage in the game. So yeah, a ton of combat strength if you're really going down that route. Plus 25% growth rate in towns with a resource assigned to them. Not that great, really. Like, it's not a hard condition to meet, but 25% growth rate just isn't really fantastic by this point in the game. That's where you get your gold building, +2 culture from imported resources. This stacks even further on your ability. Really fantastic stuff. 50% trade income is just just completely worthless. These trade income cards are never worth it. Trade income is when other civs trade with you, by the way, not trade routes to other people, so keep that in mind, it's terrible. Get a settlement limit here as well. Tax reformation down here. +2 food from resources assigned to cities is really good. Again, only because, food isn't great by this point, but you're going to have a ton of resources. So try and build stuff like, I think it's ports, grocery stores, I think as well, department stores that you have more resources in a city. Stuff like that's not bad for the Qing, just because they want to assign so many resources, like as many as they can. And 5% production towards land units. Again, if you're going for like a combat, sort of victory, then it's good, but nothing outrageous. 5% is quite small, really, isn't it? So nothing to write home about. +2 happiness from resources assigned to cities. Again, just stacking bonuses on stacking bonuses for resources. So that's their jam if you haven't already got that. They're all about resources, imported ones in particular. +3 combat strength against land units. Again, good for combat. And then the mountain resort there as well. So yeah, the Qing are all over the place. I mean, they have a building, an effect for just about every yield in the game. Food, culture, science. It's really quite odd. In saying that, this sounds like a bit of a jumbled mess, but I actually think they're quite good. Not good enough to belong in A tier, but they are actually really quite good at the culture victory. They're just a little bit worse than other people at it, I would say. This doesn't come close to the amount of gold the Mughals will generate, for example. I would probably say Britain would even do better than them in most cases. But with the changes to traders, being able to get them on turn 1, they are a little bit better now to get these yields up super quick. Because, again, the traders in the modern age are instant, so you don't have to wait for them to travel wherever they're going. You instantly get those resources, so Qing gets off to quite a fast start compared to someone like Britain, but I still don't think they're quite at that level. But yeah, they're good at culture victory, which again is a very easy victory to reach. I think I can't justify putting them higher than B tier though. I find them to just be confused and unfocused. I think if some of these buildings, maybe this one gave culture instead, somehow, I think that would be a lot better. But yeah, as it stands, I think they are so much fun to play. Again, if you're into sort of peaceful trading civs, making a lot of gold and that sort of playstyle, Qing is right up your alley. But yeah, as a continuation from the Han and the Ming, very odd. So I'll put them into B tier. Next up is Russia, which is meant to be your big payoff for playing through the tundra throughout the game. And unfortunately, there's not much payoff. So let's get into their abilities. +1 culture and science on districts, doubled in tundra. +1 culture and science just isn't that much in the modern age, especially when it relies on having districts. So, a district is when you have 2 buildings of the current age or ageless on the same tile. So, you can't, doesn't count your, your kilns or your amphitheaters from the previous exploration age. So it has to be modern age buildings. So, yeah, this takes a while to get going, really, and build up. And even when it does, it's just such a small amount of yields. Really needs a buff, in my opinion. This could be probably 3 culture and science, and it would still be, I would say, on the weaker side. So some serious work. They get production towards the Hermitage, which, if you've seen my previous video or the short I released, the Hermitage just got like giga nerfed, basically. So this gives 5 culture to settlements if it has a great work in it, which is completely horrendous for the modern age. It used to be plus 10% culture, now it's just in the dirt, basically. So unfortunately, an inadvertent nerf to Russia, and that is the last thing they needed. I have the Cossack. It's an additional cavalry unit, +4 combat strength in friendly territory. Not much to say, it's just a better defensive cavalry unit, so there you go. Have the unique siege unit here, +1 movement, lower base combat strength, but it does splash damage, so deals damage to enemy units adjacent to the target unit. A really strong effect, but not the sort of thing you want on a siege unit. Siege unit, you want to be hitting city centers. I don't believe this works when you hit walls. It has to hit a unit for the splash damage to go off. Yeah, a really fun unit, a really cool unit with a great animation, but not very strong in my opinion. Even with an incredible ability, Splash is so strong, but just on a siege unit, it doesn't really fit very well. Especially with the lower base combat strength. I have a unique building, which gives +2 food to all farms in this settlement. And it gives an additional +2 culture in tundra. Not to all the farms, mind you, just to this building gets the +2 culture. And that's about it. It's pretty bad. Again, food is not what you really want to be getting in the modern age, and +2 culture is terrible, so not often worth building. The first civic unlocks that building and gives +1 food on farms and towns, which, again, not great, really. +1 production on farms and towns in tundra, so it's quite specific. Again, keep in mind that production in towns gets converted to gold. So this essentially just reads as +1 gold on farms in tundra towns, which, again, very specific. +15% production and -15% growth in cities. Now, a bit of a weird downside, but this is overall really quite good. Growth in cities isn't very useful at this point, whereas 15% production is quite substantial in the modern age, so actually not a bad card. Next up, we have the table of ranks, which unfortunately the only effect here is that it gives +1 gold on districts and cities, so really just a really terrible civic. I wish this did something else, but yeah, a really minor effect. And the mastery here gives +1 culture on districts in cities in tundra. Again, really minor. And westernization gives +15% science, but -15% culture in cities, which is really weird because culture is kind of what the Civ has been building up to by this point. So I'm not sure why that is the case, just a very strange card. It's not bad, but it's just very weird that I feel like it should be the other way around, to be honest. You get your settlement limit here as well. Your units are immune to damage from blizzards, and enemy units in your territory take double damage from blizzards, so they've brought back this sort of flavor from Russia. This is really inconsistent. I mean, it's fun when it happens, when, a blizzard comes through and wipes out your enemy, but is that ever going to happen in your games? Maybe 1 in every 100. +3 combat strength for units in tundra is fine. Again, very defensive. But then we get to the mastery here, which is actually not bad. +1% total culture for every city, or +2% if the city's in tundra. So the more cities, and again, cities, not settlements, that you can have in the tundra, this can, give you a stacking culture buff. So you really want to be going as wide as you can and have as many cities as you can if you're going Russia. But this civic just comes so late. You have to go through 4 of your Russian civics to get here, to get, maybe 10% culture, which is really strong. But yeah, by the time you get here, it's a bit late, to be honest. So unfortunately, Russia, I think, is just so weak. Everything they do is just really minor. They don't really have anything going for them. The payoff for the whole Tundra playstyle is just not here. And I think out of all the civs, really, they need significant buffs. So you've probably guessed Russia will have to go into the D tier. And finally, last but not least, we have Siam. And they are all about diplomacy, but they do it, I think, a little bit better than Nepal. So they gain a unique diplomatic action to immediately suzerain a city-state. It just costs more influence. This is really good. Considering right now the meta is basically city-states in Civ 7, Siam fits right into that, and this isn't that much higher influence than Befriend Independent. I think it's about maybe 2.5 times as much influence to instantly get it. Now, obviously, this is more higher value on those, not friendly city-states, which there'll be some of. No matter how well you did in Exploration Antiquity, there's probably still some that don't like you, so it's really, really strong, especially with hub towns. Hub towns are still, despite the nerf from Ursa, are still quite good. They're still really good. So, yeah, Siam, as long as city-states are good, Siam, I think, will be kept out of the D-tier doldrums. Moving down to their unique unit here. Unique range unit, increased range strength and +1 movement, and it can move after attacking, which this keyword has always been strong in Civ, but it's even better in Civ 7 now that we have commanders. This means you can, unpack from a commander, attack, and then repack in the commander, all in the same turn. This is a really strong unit, but Siam, it's a bit of a last resort. You really don't want to be going to war or fighting much as Siam, so... but if you do have to, this is really good. They have a great person here, and again, I've said it before, I'll say it again, these are at least, well, I was going to say they're all over the shop, these are a little bit more focused, I would say, generally speaking. So these all more or less relate to, allying city-states. They have some here that are a bit odd, so converts a city-state into a town under your control. You probably don't want to be converting city-states into towns, to be honest, but they have another one that converts an IP into a city-state instantly, so that one's really good. But yeah, overall, they're actually pretty decent. Worth building if you have some spare production, but I probably wouldn't prioritize them really, particularly because there's quite a few here that give you combat, units. There's 2 at least. So yeah, keep that in mind. But there is one here that gives +4 production for every allied city-state into a city, which is really good. That could be a lot of production. So yeah, again, if you have spare production, build them, but otherwise I wouldn't worry too much. You have the Bang, it's the unique building, free culture and happiness, and that's about it. It has to be placed on a navigable river, so not outstanding at all, really. Up to their civic tree, we have the 9 gems. So we get the Bang, +2 culture for every civilization relationship above friendly status. This is going to be a running theme for Siam. Their civics are so poorly scaled for the modern age. I've made fun of them before. +2 culture for every civ, that's friendly with you is terrible. By the time you get to this point, 2 culture's nothing. It's even worse on small maps, but yeah, just a terrible effect. +2 influence from gold buildings is not bad. If you're building gold buildings, then this is a nice little bit of influence, but it is little. The mastery down here gives 2 influence for every, same as above, but 2 influence. Better, slightly better, but again, 2 influence is also reasonably small by this point, and you have to, it's contingent on you being friendly with people, which is not too bad to do, but you are also going to annoy a few people by befriending all these city-states because you'll probably beat everyone to the punch, so that's going to annoy a few people. Keep that in mind. And again, +2 happiness in cities for each city-state you're suzerain of. Not bad. It's going to be a lot of happiness, but happiness just isn't that valuable. Quite easy to get to the point where you're in a permanent celebration by this point, so it's not really going to do a whole lot. The next civic, the unique range unit, gets 6 combat strength in or adjacent to city-states you're suzerain of, so I really like this one, actually. In theory, this just helps you defend all your city-states if people try to take them out. Your absolutely busted unit could come in here with 6 combat strength and defend your city-states, which I really quite like. +20% influence towards initiating diplomatic actions with city-states. Unfortunately, this is a lot worse than it sounds. These diplomatic actions aren't the ones you want, like Befriend Independent or even your unique one, where you they instantly become a suzerain. This is stuff like Promote Growth, Levy Unit, that sort of thing. So completely useless unless they fix that. But last time I played, that was the case. So this was really, really terrible. A bit of a letdown, really. +3 culture on the palace for every city state you're suzerain of. Again, just such a small amount of culture. Now, yes, this does make your specialist better because it goes onto the palace itself, but still just way too little, way too few culture. Terrible. +5 gold for each allied city-state, same thing. They get their wonder here, +5 culture and gold for every city-state you're suzerain of. Again, basically the same thing, it's just too little. These yields are too little, these aren't scaled for the modern age. +2 culture for every diplomatic action within the civilization, absolutely horrendous. I mean, just look at these things, you know, line by line here. You got the effect, and then right underneath it, it says cost 4,000 culture. When are you ever going to pay this back? You shouldn't really be initiating diplomatic actions with civs by this stage in the game. They're just not really worth it. Even if you were, I mean, this is just horrendous. This will never pay itself off. Do not get this. Even to get down to this mastery here, I would say it's just not worth it. 5 culture and 2 gold for every trade route with another civ. To get both of these, you need 8,000 culture invested, and you'll never pay it off. You'll absolutely never pay it off. So the Siam civic tree is a serious letdown, unfortunately. Pretty much everything in here is just extraordinarily weak. You could probably just ignore it, would be my advice. Play Siam as if their only ability is this one to instantly befriend a city-state. And yeah, it says a fair bit about how good this ability is, that even if this was the only effect, I'd still say they're not terrible. So Siam, they're a very average civ. Because city-states are good, that's what's keeping them, yeah, decent, but they can just sneak into the C tier off the back of this ability, and that's Siam, C tier. And that's it. This is the completed Modern Age tier list, and with this, I've now done a video ranking every civ across every age in Civ 7, so go check those out if you're interested in the Antiquity or Exploration Age. But let me know your thoughts down below. Do you agree or disagree with any of my placements? Overall, I would say the Modern Age civs actually have reasonably flavorful design. I absolutely love stuff like Prussia, being able to trade with people they're at war with, or Nepal gifting Gurkhas to other civs. Stuff like that is actually reasonably inspired, and despite the Modern Age being the worst by far in my opinion, I wish the other civs in the game were as unique as the Modern Age ones, for some of them at least. Please don't take any inspiration from Russia, for example. But yeah, don't forget to dislike or like the video, subscribe if you want to see more, and leave a comment with your thoughts. Also a special shout out here to Chris J, who recently became a member of the channel, which gives him a little icon next to his name. Thanks for that, Chris. I really appreciate it. Yeah, that's all from me. Thanks for watching.